Are you losing your religion or just finding your faith? When you go through faith deconstruction, it feels like you're losing everything at once. But right now, I want to untangle three words that the church has treated as synonyms for way too long, or at a minimum, they get conflated frequently: faith, religion, and spirituality. I'm Pastor Carissa, and if you have survived a toxic church environment, you know how confusing the aftermath of that can be. The church often conflates faith, religion, and spirituality as if they are the same thing. But researchers and sociologists point out that these three concepts are distinct, and understanding the nuanced difference between them is the key to surviving religious trauma. We could think of it like a house where faith is the foundation, the groundwork. Religion is the physical house itself, the walls, the locks on the doors. Spirituality is the act of living inside that home, finding the warmth and the rest within it. Once you understand this, you realize that you can completely tear down a toxic religious structure and still keep your foundation. So what does that exactly mean? Let's start by looking at faith. Questioning your church's rules isn't a loss of faith. It's often a sign that your faith is growing up. The church often teaches that faith means turning your brain off, blindly accepting dogma without question, but scholars and researchers actually define faith as your internal meaning-making system. In our house metaphor, faith is the knowing. It's the deeply personal way you piece together your experiences to understand yourself, the world, and the divine. When you enter a period of critical distance or deconstruction, you're simply examining the foundation to see what is actually true and what was just handed to you by other people. Deconstruction is not the enemy of faith. It's often the doorway into a much deeper, more mature, and resilient belief system. Faith is the knowing. Religion is the doing. It's the outward expression. Religion is the institution, the cluster of norms, the rules, the specific practices, and the boundary markers that define who is in and who is out. Because religion relies on human hierarchies and power dynamics, it's almost always where spiritual abuse and religious trauma occur. Abusive systems use the rules of religion, taking sacred texts out of context to enforce compliance, to control people, to maintain their own power. When a religious system demands blind obedience at the expense of your own physical or emotional safety, that structure has become toxic. If you've had to walk away from a church to protect your peace, you didn't walk away from God. You walked away from a man-made institution. You can leave toxic religion behind and still protect your spirit. And that brings us to spirituality. We know that faith is the knowing and religion is the doing. Spirituality then is the being. It's the personal inward connection to the sacred. And religious trauma often makes us feel completely disconnected from our bodies, from the world, from the divine, and it causes us to feel intense shame, and it isolates us. But spirituality is about finding life. A huge part of trauma healing is moving from the death of trauma back into the life to heal your body, your mind, and your spirit. Seeking to deepen your spirituality actually lessens the hold that trauma has on you. Spirituality does not have to look like sitting in a pew. It could be sitting on your porch with coffee, noticing beauty, processing your emotions, learning to trust your own intuition again. You don't need to be in a church building to be deeply and beautifully spiritual. Spirituality is the gentle, rhythmic motion that restores your spiritual hands and feet after trauma. So as you navigate your own healing journey, remember the framework that you can have a profound faith, a knowing, and a rich spirituality, a being, without having to participate in a toxic religion, the doing. If you've been harmed by a religious institution, it is completely normal to step away from the physical structure to protect yourself. Take time to evaluate your foundation, rediscover what brings you life. That's a sacred act. Leaving an abusive religious institution does not mean you have failed God. It does not mean you have lost your faith. It means that you are protecting your spirit. And deconstruction clears the toxic ground. But reconstruction builds your sanctuary. You have the permission to rebuild.